This response is deeply fascinating to me because what I said had absolutely nothing to do with this. If anything, the grand thesis of the video was to stop making fun of Charlie Kirk. Because while I do not agree with Charlie Kirk on just about any topic, it would be disingenuous and dangerous to not recognize the skill that Charlie Kirk had for what it is. And this is the other fascinating part of that response to me, is that the majority of that video is kind of glazing Charlie Kirk. It is very, very difficult to quantify the impact that Charlie Kirk and his rhetorical style have had on the broader American culture. And the impact is pretty obvious and visible. You can go into the debate sphere and you can see his tactics being adopted by his greatest critics and his greatest opponents. Like, Dean Withers' entire platform is right out of the Charlie Kirk playbook. And this is where the memetics come in, right? Because even if Dean Withers is going to try and say that he's more open-minded, more liberal-minded, more leftist-minded, he is still dealing almost exclusively in the language and rhetoric of domination. He is not actually a Kirkian leftist. He is a Kirkian who has been put in the position of defending a leftist idea. Every time he insults his opponent's intelligence before citing a fact or a statistic, every time he stops the debate to have a laughing fit over some sort of logical or factual slip, that is Charlie Kirk. This is the great underlying danger of memes like We Are Charlie Kirk. It is born from the same mindset of ritualistic humiliation and domination that leftist ideas are supposed to be challenging. Which comes to the last really fascinating thing about that reply, is that the bulk of that video was addressed to and criticizing leftists. It was a caution against living within the psychology and physiology of our ideological opponent. It was a direct response to the ethical drift that is happening around the We Are Charlie Kirk meme. Now, with all that in mind, I'm going to really briefly summarize the original video and then go back to that comment. We examined memetics and how they are used to normalize and spread certain ideas. Then we examined Charlie Kirk and his use of memetics to normalize and spread his ideas. Then we looked at how AI is being used to compartmentalize and regurgitate very similar ideas. And then we looked at how the meme was a way of normalizing the use of AI using Charlie Kirk as a vector. The final statement was that if we are going to allow our morals and ethics to drift so that we can humiliate somebody, then we are not criticizing Charlie Kirk, we are embodying him. Now, I'm 36, so I got to watch the rise of Charlie from some nobody in the forums to a national star, right? So I'm pretty familiar with my words being twisted or disingenuously read. So a comment like this is fascinating to me, not because it doesn't understand my point, or not because it didn't listen to me, and not because it twists my words, but because it's emblematic of precisely the memification of violence that I was talking about. You could only assume that that was the argument that I was making if you were assuming I was operating under the same framework of violence and domination that Charlie Kirk was. This is not a rational conclusion to draw. This is the kind of conclusion you draw if you are operating under somebody else's framework and you don't have the means to critically analyze information yourself. Like, this is exactly the kind of question that Charlie Kirk would use to deflect from an argument that he was losing. So when this person comes in here and is repeating it, unquestioning, and not actually engaging with any of the information presented, they are performing Charlie Kirk. This is mimetic inversion. This person has heard this rhetoric so much that they reproduce it without question. They are trapped within Charlie Kirk's framework, forced to see the world through the lens that he created for them. And if we are not careful, if we are not cognizant of the devices that we are using, if we are not self-examining enough to understand why we are doing certain things, we run the very real risk of validating a worldview that we fight against. And trust me, you don't want to be a simulacrum of somebody else's idea. You don't want your voice replaced by a soundboard of somebody else's quotes. You do not want to be host to a doppelganger. But we are not immune to propaganda, and nothing in the world is neutral.